Tonight, we're talking about awesome wood grain. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Look at this SG. That is such a beautiful mahogany body. Not only does it have this rare flamed figuring within it, but you also have great wood grain. It appears to be two pieces. It's rocking your early 61 sideways Vibrola with ABR1 bridge. This is definitely a modern guitar, but it looks pretty darn good. And be prepared to be extra shocked, it's from the year 2021, so this is one of the original collections. You do not see many SGs looking like that today, but looking at it from the back makes it even better. As you can see, it's got booked match vibes. It's not perfect, but it has matching mountains on the back. I would have been very happy to have documented this as the very first one that I featured on my show. And surprisingly, it's actually being offered at a discount. These are the extraordinary ordinary guitars, I call them. It's just a regular guitar model you can buy at any authorized dealer. But if you can find one that has exceptional grain or figuring when it normally doesn't, I fully believe this could have sold for like $2,500 plus. And here's a seller that knows it. So it's AJ's Guitar Gear. He has this exceptional, again, 2021 custom shop Korina reissue. If I could have found one of these when they first launched this, I would have definitely documented this thing. You don't find figured Korina too often, especially on this model. These things are $10,000 brand new. Typically, you just have wood grain, other nice things. But this particular one just has a lot of movement in the body, and I bet it looks phenomenal in person. And on top of that, look at the back. This is a time where I can honestly say, yeah, go ahead and spend 10 grand on this one. You will never regret it if you were in the market for one of these. Can you get a better discount if you talk to a dealer? For a straight grained example, yes. Those are not the top sellers at most shops. If you need to see a Korina Explorer, you can check out the documentation of the collector's edition. But this is a great extraordinary ordinary example of one of these. Next up, by more guitars. It's a Koa Top 1959 reissue. And I've got to say, this was incredibly attractive. I made an offer because I would have happily documented this thing, but unfortunately we were too far apart. So it really just reminds me of like a mahogany top golden era standard, because this is not the craziest Koa I've ever seen. In many ways, it almost looks like Rosewood, similar to the Brazilian Rosewood Les Paul Custom. I think that's probably what drew me to it, but it looks so rich and vibrant in these photos. Now the more in-person look, yeah, now I'm getting the more Koa vibes. As far as the rest of the specs, I thought the serial number was cool, 911, as your beginning digits. And they claim it's got the Bolivian Rosewood fretboard. Then, as extra icing on the cake, you've got some interesting wood grain on the back, and it appears to be one piece. Got our next 1959. This one was kind of a shock to me. Is it actually natural flavored? I mean, they claim it's a lemon burst. This just looks like an aged natural top to me, and I found that incredibly fascinating. Usually, I'm not the biggest fan of relic guitars, but this one works incredibly well. But then you move to this angle, and it's like, oh no, that's exactly what they're talking about. Kind of looks like a greeny / any aged lemon. I would like to see a finish that more so looks like this from all angles. But I really like this area right here. How the flame has flame within it. That's a good piece of maple. You know, that's probably what does this effect. It appears lighter in certain angles and a little bit more saturated in others. Sometimes there are some extremely active tops like that. Other times it can be their lighting source. But then you get to the back, it's very vibrant cherry, and they've heavy aged that thing, which could be a pro or a con depending on your personal preference. Let's dial it back to Gibson USA pricing. It's $3,200. It's an appetite burst. We've seen these a bunch on the show. But that's a nice top. Oh man, yeah, that's easily one of the nicest ones I've seen. That's custom shop level flame. Some of these can be pretty darn weak. It follows our theme of you will never regret buying this one, even if you have to pay top value for it. Now let's get a little bit weird and wacky, as well as expensive. I've kind of avoided talking about this model because I absolutely hate it. It has no historical significance. It's not like, oh yeah, they made one of these in the 50s and that's why they did it. And that means a lot coming from me. I'm the guy that likes the weird stuff, but these have slowly been growing on me, and it's mainly because beautiful examples like this one have been showing up. They've got some really nice ringy wood grain. A lot of the ones I've seen in the past have been pretty plain. For example, here's one over in Australia that a viewer first sent me. And it was that first one where I was like, you know what? That's probably the nicest one I've seen as far as the grain goes. But they're interesting. 3 humbuckers, really bad control. layout. It's a 4-way toggle switch. You can have all the pickups on or just one of the individuals, I would assume. It is a straight-up Korina top and a Korina body and neck, which is something you don't find too often. That famous forked headstock that they briefly used on some Explorers sleeps on this model. But this particular one's cool because it's Les Paul Tribute number 2. That's a pretty low serial. Now, I do remember these things selling between $5,000 and $8,000, so $14K I thought that was a bit much, but it was a cool serial. Then our other one here is a little bit more realistic. I mean, you gotta remember, it's rumble seat music. They're a top-end dealer. You're gonna pay top-end prices. But when I first saw this, I was like, darn it, they bought that other one. I really liked it because it does have similar wood grain. But no, this is not number 2. Although when I first looked at it, I was like, is that number 2? It looks like it might say 62. I'm not sure. But this one's got some great backwood grain, maybe a little bit of bird's eye and figuring. They're out there if you want something really, really strange. Now check out this BFG, oddly listed as transparent ebony. Wow, that's so transparent, I don't see it anymore. I honestly don't know what happened to this one. I think somebody took it, sanded down the top, and then this is what they were left with. We've got 4 photos that are the same, and then one back photo that shows some nice wood grain and your regular mahogany, so we don't have a lot to go off of here. And then we have some sort of an appraisal sheet over here. And it's being claimed to be 100% original, so is this a limited BFG that I'm not familiar with? There was a natural one, but this one doesn't have the carves, and I know there's a CFG out there, or at least that's what I call it because it was part of the Guitar of the Week series in 2007, but it had the full gloss black, so was it one of those where the finish was taken down? Either way, it's beautiful, and it belongs in tonight's episode. Next for your viewing pleasure, it's a 1974 Les Paul Custom. Can you tell me why I added it to my watch list? Great wood grain. Granted, it's a 3-piece top. That's just part of the era. You have to love and embrace it. So wiggly and squiggly, and then you got a little bit of the whoopity-woos over here. And you can tell that's got a little bit of a chatoyan effect to it as well, so this will probably match that because these woods look very similar, like they could have been put together. But then these crazy worms came into play. You don't find many natural customs in this era. I would argue this one's more so 75 because that's when they start to transition into these premium grade M6 Schaller tuners that are Gibson branded. It still has the mahogany neck though, so it's pre-transition there into maple. So that can be seen as desirable, but then you get the kind of skinnier neck width. Definitely Kalamazoo made because we've got the bone nut. So not an early Nashville one. We've got the thin binding in the cutaway. You can see both of the pancake layers. And we've got a little bit of finish checking on the top. Relatively speaking, the lacquer's pretty clean and clear. And our truss rod's in good shape. And how about this premium grade tangerine burst, this time from 2005? This one's got kind of an interesting chevron quilt figuring pattern to it, where it kind of meets up at an A-frame. And unfortunately, the photos are a little bit too reflective for us to fully take it in. But for 2005, that's a pretty nice example. You've got a cherry back. And hey, there we go, we got rid of the glare, so you can fully take it in and appreciate it. It's got those channels running within it too. That one's offered by Ishibashi, kinda like our Guitar Center. It's a big chain store. They're usually pretty good to deal with. $7,000 is definitely a premium. The mid-2000s were not built to quite the same historic specs as they are today. There's a Gibson ES335 with a Veritone thrown on there for good measure. Early 2000s is a fantastic time for ES-styled instruments. There's a 355 I'm still kicking myself to this day that I didn't buy from the guitar broker about a year or two ago. This one really reminds me of that. This is just insane flame. Now you gotta remember, 335s, they are sandwich guitars. So this is just the back layer. They are veneers. They're real wooden veneers. However, this is fantastic. They definitely put some extra time into this one. Because I mean, even look at the edges, just ridiculous. 335s can be incredibly beautiful, and thrown on the Veritone, it's just something added to make it a little bit more special. And the seller knows what he's doing with the outside photo shots, making us want to buy it. But how much is he asking? $4,700? Could be a lot worse. And now I've got one more interesting one for you. It's not as beautiful as what we've just seen. However, it has allegedly made beautiful music. We're talking about this. So an ex-Peter Green model showed up. No, it's not greeny this time, it's different. We just talked about these things, the LP Firebrand. We had documented a essentially new old stock condition one, but apparently this particular one belonged to Green in the early 80s, allegedly used to record the Guitar Hero album of 1985. That's great, we've officially got a famous user of one of these. The complimentary TheSG Firebrand deluxe model has Zakk Wylde batting for it, but apparently shortly after that, Green gave it away and or sold it, and then this guy bought it in the mid-90s from a friend of Green via a local newspaper ad. So if that's all true, pretty cool. Now, unfortunately, the photos that we've been provided here, you can't tell any details. You're gonna pony up crazy money, in this case is $30,000, which is at least 20 times what this thing would normally be worth. You want to be able to see it and identify it somehow, like look at your wood grain, how you can see the headstock wing is a little bit of a different color. But on this one, we can obviously see it's the other side that's a super different color. But you also have to remember, wood looks different at different angles, so it's never just open and shut. But you can also look at the body. This one's clearly 4 pieces, and you've got the wear by it, and I can't see anything out of these photos to back that up. I would say, buy with caution. Alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.